Hello listeners and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Siteshed podcast. My name is Matt Jones. I am your host, your facilitator, and the man with the mic. And today we are bringing you a podcast on a topic that is quite close to home for me. We're talking today about copywriting, and not copywriting in the sense of the legal term. This is copywriting is in the sense of creating content. So we have on the show today a colleague who is an expert in the field, and he's going to shed some light on some of the myths, and then I suppose as well some of the things that you can do at your end to improve your copywriting, content writing skills. So stay tuned. This is going to be an awesome episode, and I really encourage you guys to listen into this because it's so relevant across the board today, especially with things like, blogging, social media posting, all that kind of stuff. It's all copywriting, and we all do it, and a lot of us don't do it very well. So I hope you guys get something out of this, and if you do, please make sure you head across to iTunes and leave us a review. We would very much appreciate that. And if you have any questions or you wanted any further clarification or anything that we speak about today in this episode, by all means, let us know, because we are very good at doing the old follow-up episodes. So if there's enough of you that ask for any further information, rest assured I will make sure it happens. Anyway, that's all for me, so let's dive right in. Well, it's the beginning of a new year, and typically at the beginning of a new year, as business owners, we sit down and we try to map out a success path or a blueprint for our organizations. The reality is, however, as tradies and contractors, many of us are lacking the foundational and fundamental tools that can really form the launchpad for our business. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys, and Tradie Web Guys build amazing websites that serve as a business launchpad. Perhaps you need to look more professional, or you need higher conversions from the leads you're currently getting with your marketing. Maybe you need some lead generation yourself, or maybe you need some sort of automation or a way that you can keep in contact regularly with your existing customers and with your leads that may one day turn into potential customers. Maybe you need systems and processes in your business. Tradie Web Guys specializes in all this stuff, and it's specific for tradies and contractors. So head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/shed from the site shed, where you can fill in a form and you can claim your free audit valued at $385. Again, that link is Tradie Web Guys, TRADIE Web WEBGUYS, tradiewebguys.com.au/shed, SHED for the site shed. The reality is, folks, if you want 2018 to be any different from 2017, then some things are going to have to change. Don't let 2018 become just another year. Make it the year.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello listeners, and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. And today we are tackling an issue that has been plaguing the industry, and especially a lot of the clients we deal with through Tradie Web Guys, the digital agency, which is copywriting. And it's an important issue which I think very few tradespeople do well. So today we're joined on the microphone by Owen Russell from Russell Writing, and he's going to help us dispel a few of the myths and give us a bit of a blueprint looking forward. Owen, welcome.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me. How are you?
So, mate, we're talking copywriting today, and looks from somebody who owns and runs a web design company, I see that this is a ongoing issue. And to be fair, this episode will probably speak largely to myself as well, because I know in the past we've certainly gone down the path of we obviously build websites for clients. However, so often, actually, I would say 99% of the time, the clients don't necessarily have content for the site. So we sort of have generic copy, which is very well depending on their industry, we have generic copy which we have for them. However, we often say to them, guys, this is generic. Go and tailor this and make it your own. Whether or not they do is another question. But I suppose the whole conversation around copywriting is one that, from my experience, people tend not to value unless they really understand it. So I've invited you on the show today because I want to try and help listeners out there get a better understanding of copywriting, where it's applicable, where they should be applying some of their resources, and as a result, where they can go looking forward in the copywriting world. So, mate, thank you once again. And I suppose typically I suppose let's talk about some of the pain points, really. I mean, when we talk about copywriting, I mean, you must see it all over the place. I mean, obviously, our listeners here are mostly trade-based organizations, but they're all over the world. What are some of the common problems that you see and some of the most, I suppose, common occurrences that you see of copywriting-related issues?
Yeah, I mean, in sort of relation, I know how some tradies and builders will, walk down the street and look at a building and they'll see the framework to it and kind of get a gauge of how it works. I'm the same in the sense of if I see an advert or any kind of written work, I'll see the sort of underlying effects of that. Copywriting is basically any form of text for the purpose of advertising or any other style of marketing.
Yeah.
Be it sort of your billboards, your brochures, even, if your company has a jingle, the lyrics to that. So it does cover a lot. And that's where I think...
Have you got a jingle, Owen?
I don't have a jingle, unfortunately, no.
Come on, mate. The listeners want to hear this jingle.
So, I mean, if you've seen 2.5 Men, then he's a copywriter in a sense. But the real pain points I come across a lot is some people are actually too humble in their own way. So to sell themselves and to actually sell their product,
right?
They don't cut straight to the chase. They don't sort of sell what the customer wants to see. A perfect example of this is currently doing a bit of work for a sort of conference company. Now their landing page, which is basically the first page you land on, selling their conferences to the people that actually want to attend it, but not to the manager who has to sign off on it.
Right.
I mean, they're struggling in their sales, and that's simply because they're selling to the guy who wants to go, but not the value of the manager who has to sign off to let his employee go.
Interesting.
So that's where the mishap of a lot of people actually, trip up on, basically.
So I'm guessing there's a pretty fine line there. Well, in my experience, there's definitely a fine line between, like educating and selling. And when you say, they're not cutting to the chase and they're not selling properly, are you talking about they're not communicating the point or the purpose of that content correctly? I mean, it's not always about selling, is it?
No, it's not. It obviously depends on what your assets are that you or the service you provide. One thing I find is just a simple rewording of a paragraph can just increase your sort of attraction tenfold.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they land on a site or see a brochure, immediately go, "How does this benefit me?" And I might come across rude to some people I work with, but you kind of have to put yourself aside and just pretend that you're the customer and go, what's Owen going to give for me? What am I going to get out of it?
Yeah. Because
it's all well and good me saying, I've got 8 years in the industry, I've got really good handwriting. Doesn't matter what I do, it's what I can obviously deliver to that you guys in a sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of people kind of, when they write stuff, they write it from their professional side, not a Joe Bloggs who doesn't have a clue about that sort of specialty that you perform in.
And isn't this this is just so typical, I find, of websites across the board, not necessarily trade businesses, but just businesses in general. When we go and we start creating content for our websites, we so often want to create content that we would like to read ourselves, not thinking that people that are reading our websites do not have the same level of knowledge on any given topic that we do. So, you so often see websites that are just so full of jargon and technical talk, which in no way is going to correlate in any way at all to their potential customer.
Yeah, you're spot on, exactly. I'm doing a project at the moment with a health company, and in their bios there's so much medical jargon. I've said to them, if someone reads this, they don't have a clue, what this qualification is, what that kind of treatment is. So I've actually basically helping them set up a dictionary page.
Yeah.
So it's just a link to a different page that just explains in plain English what this, exactly entails. All of these, jargon and some pretty hard words to say as well.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really important for people to understand out there, listeners out there. I do try and teach customers and clients things about this. And we've talked about this before on the on the show. However, when we're talking about creating that content, it's really important that, first of all, I always tell guys, create it with your mother in mind. Like when you're writing content, think of it like if my mum was to read this, would she actually understand what I'm talking about? Would it make sense to her? Because that really is the ultimate disqualifier. No offense, mum, but you really got to dull it down sometimes in order to make people understand, what you're talking about, not get caught up in all that technical hoo-ha. Have you got a bit of a framework around that as well?
Yeah, I'll agree on that. Sometimes the hardest work is the most or the simplest piece to write.
Right.
You can sit there and run your pen away with the most complicated sort of pieces, but actually trying to simplify it can actually be a lot harder. The way how I generally work is no one's ever seen my first drafts because they are horrific. Like, that's bad. But you pile down as much information as you can on Word. Forget about punctuation. Forget about making it look neat.
Yeah.
My rule is don't edit as you go, because then you spend so much time on that rather than basically dump it down. You then start to backtrack and tidy it up, and you read it. You read it out like you would, reading someone else's website.
Yeah.
If anything makes you squirm or go, oh, what's that? Then put a line under it or highlight it, and then carry on.
Yeah.
And then go back and start to edit that and simplify it and try and put yourself in, like I said, like Joe Blogg's shoes. That's how I will generally go back. And like you say, send it to your mum, send it to your mates, and just say to them, look, just read this. Does this understand?
Yeah.
If they laugh and say, I don't get that, then where you're going before you actually put it to a potential client that could lose you a project or a deal or anything.
So you've been copywriting for the better part of 10 years or so, Russell, and I suppose within that time we've seen some pretty significant changes in the search engine landscape. How today do we go about creating content that's both relevant to our audience and, I suppose, within visibility of search engines?
Yeah, so SEO, search engine optimization, is a funny topic because Google, for example, they don't actually tell anyone how they rank. It's basically the experts that have worked out an algorithm and basically played on trial and error to see how Google does it. But basically it's on three main subjects. It's the volume of traffic that you get to your website, which shows that you must be relevant in your field.
Yep.
Obviously the keywording, in sort of matching that up.
So what's a key? Just break that down for the listeners out there.
Yeah, no, for example, for myself, a copywriter who's in Sydney, what I want to try to do is again, if you put yourself in someone else's shoes when you do this, if I'm trying to look for a copywriter in Sydney, 99% of the time I'll type into Google copywriter Sydney or Sydney copywriter.
Yeah.
So what you want to do in your SEO side of your website or in your keywords in your homepage or whatnot is try fit that in. So Russell Riding, one of the top copywriters in Sydney.
Yeah.
Just words like that will just make sure that you're on top. You can get quite complicated if you even start tagging your pictures. So when you have a file in your computer and you upload it to your website, make sure you name that picture.
Yeah.
Word it to fit in.
There'll be listeners out here, clients of mine that are listening to this going, that's why he makes us do that. Because I've actually got videos which talk people through how to name images, how to reduce the size, how to upload them to the website, all this kind of stuff. So thanks for clarifying that, because when I tell them they don't listen, but when someone else does, they might.
I mean, it gets it does get very complicated. So Google ranks your website and even how fast it is to upload.
Of course.
So, we can spend all day talking about that sort of tiny little sides of it. But in regards to content, as you touched on, that's where the third element comes in. It's actual how refreshing your page is. So how many times you renew it, for example. That's why people write blogs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, on my website, I have a social media feed, just posts all the stuff that I put on social media onto my website. I've got my own blog. It's more of a personal side. It's just more of an enjoyment. But that just tells Google that the website's still being used. It's being refreshed. There's new content. And that, again, helps it to the first page. So when you get someone like myself saying, hey, let me write a blog for you, it's not just me wanting to write 200 words, a week or whatnot. It's actually keeping your website on top of Google.
Yep. So one of the really cool things that I've seen working for our clients, especially guys that do project-based work, builders, landscape architects, like sort of project style, not so much your emergency service kind of jobs, but the longer projects, is we've been putting on their websites project galleries, and then within those project galleries, they're able to add a page which is relevant to a specific job that they've done. So, for example, if they did a home renovation in Manly, they can add a page on their website and they can call it Home Renovation Manly, and the keyword can be Home Renovation Manly, and then they can create an entire page on that specific job. They can attach all the images and photo galleries that are relevant to that one project. And the advantage of doing that is it's kind of like a double-edged sword. First of all, from a search engine point of view, it's fantastic because you're targeting a keyword and it's fresh content on your website. And secondly, if a client ever comes to you and says, "Hey, I live in Manly, I live in Freshwater, I want to get my house renovated. Have you done any similar projects?" You've basically got then collateral that you can send to them, which is basically social proof. It's saying, well, yeah, here it is. Here's a complete case study of a job that's kind of similar to what you want to achieve. Yes, we can help. So there are creative ways of doing it. I think for a lot of instances, the most of the guys that we've worked with in the past, they're less inclined as tradespeople to blog. I sort of think, blog? What? I'm a plumber. What am I going to blog about? So it's been a really good transition for us to be able to help these guys implement like that case study framework, because it's effectively the same thing at the end of the day. However, it's worded slightly differently, and they actually enjoy doing that. So
yeah, I agree, and I think what you're doing there for your clients is spot on, especially for that industry. Like I say, I'm a writer, so I enjoy putting pen to paper, but
yeah,
as a trader, you guys prefer to get your hands dirtier. So becoming a linguistic might not be what you want to do on a Sunday afternoon.
So, Owen, I know this, obviously we've spoken about, websites and copywriting on websites, but it doesn't really start and end there, does it? I mean, when we're talking copywriting, it could be relevant to, what you're posting on your social media or what you're posting on Instagram and all this kind of thing. Typically, in my experience, a lot of guys, they sort of do that ad hoc. They sit there and they just pull out their phone and type some post and send it, and it's pretty evident when you read it. What's your experience with things like social media and, like strategy behind content creating and content syndication through those other sort of platforms?
Yeah. Now, I'm sure there'll be some listeners that are on the same page with me. But when I started Russell Writing as a business, previous to that, I used to look at these sort of soul seekers on Instagram posting all these inspirational long... And I used to go, what is going on in their mind? And then I started Russell Writing, and I found myself doing the same thing, putting those posts out there. kind of realizing.
That's why I unfollowed you on Instagram.
Trying to sleep a little bit over it, but with social media, it's more about the presence. The fact that you're there, and when I went through the checklist, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have done that as well. When you start your own business, you have a little checklist of going, okay, do I have an ABN, business account, account guy, that kind of stuff. And I found myself, social media is now up there, which kind of shows this generation that people that don't have a website or don't have social media are unfortunately falling behind, because that's how everything's going. So I generally keep my sort of captions to my Instagram post short, because no one's going to sit there and read a 50-word sort of caption. Try think of it as view of Twitter. Twitter has a limit. Try sort of keep to that rule. It's really with Instagram, Facebook's slightly moving that way, but it's the hashtags. If you can nail your hashtags, and what I mean by that is for example, my hashtags like copywriting, blogging. Have a look at about numbers. So when you actually type in hashtag blog, Instagram then sort of associates it with the blog one, and you can see how many people posted in blog and are basically working around that kind of a hashtag.
Isn't that I remember teaching this at a workshop years ago, just trying to get people to understand how to properly use hashtags, because you see it all the time, don't you? Like, hashtag I can't be bothered getting out of bed today because it's sunny. Like, that's not a hashtag. Like, people don't. It's like they try and use hashtags as an exclamation.
You're spot on there. Hashtag is simply just putting your post in a category.
Yeah.
So if you can match that up with your time. So, for example, if someone's trying to get some inspiration for a house renovation, like you say in Manly, they might, the way social media is, that they'll probably look at Instagram on pictures of renovations.
Yeah.
If they can see one of your pictures, like you say on the website, posted on Instagram, they'll then go to your company profile and then go, okay, this guy's done a lot of good work, or that kind of style that I like. And then you've got an email and you've got a project tendering. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And if anyone wants to see, I suppose, how this hashtag structure looks, well, for Instagram anyway, I mean, look, we're getting a little bit off topic, but you can head across to Russell_writing on Instagram, and you can have a look at the hashtags there. Or even if you want to head to the Site Shed, our Instagram page, like I've always got hashtags. You're allowed 30 a post, and I use 30 every post. To be honest, my Instagram, I don't really give it a whole lot of attention. I have no idea how many followers or whatever I've got, but I know all the hashtags and stuff. I do that as a bit of a strategy. So I have all those hashtags pre-written. They're all saved. I keep them in in a Google Keep file, which is kind of like Evernote, if you will, for G Suite. And so they're all in there, and then I can just copy and paste them into my posts as I need to. So anyway, we're getting off topic a little bit there, I suppose, but I thought it would be an interesting thing to cap off on, because I think people do assimilate, copywriting with websites, and that's about it. When the reality is, copywriting really stems into anything that you're publicizing, and that even, I would say, crosses over into video as well. And I know over the years we've taught quite a bit in relation to SEO, and the principles for creating content with SEO in mind stay the same with video. Like it's more of a spoken scenario as opposed to written, but the principles behind it still stay the same. So I think once you master that art, or once you get good at it, then it definitely correlates into different areas of business.
Yeah, I agree. I've written script for videos for a previous recruitment company, and it's the same principle of still getting that message across. Instead of on paper, it's just someone in front of the camera reading it. Obviously, there's a few more elements to that and how they present it, but you definitely on the ball there.
So, Owen, let's talk a little bit about who this is relevant to. I mean, is this, if you're working for an organization, or if you're, I suppose, if you're the person that's, the face of a company, and you're posting content, then this is certainly relevant to that person, right? Like we're not just talking to business owners here.
Yeah, we're talking to, like you said, anyone who is in control of that social media, who's in control of that face of the company. Yeah,
mate. I mean, I would wish that more people took copywriting more seriously, even on their personal pages. Like I see some posts that go up on Facebook, and they make my eyes bleed.
I do. I've had one case of obviously I have a sort of copywriting community where you find a lot of people that they'll write a caption or a Facebook post for their mate and then believe that they're a qualified copywriter. It is amazing sometimes. So, yeah.
So how do you measure effective copywriting? So we've sort of gone on to a little bit about the hows. Now let's talk a little bit about, I suppose, the what ifs, like what can we expect if it's done properly, and then how can we track to see if we are doing it right and if it is actually paying dividends?
Yeah, so in regards to copywriting, it's more of a self sort of log. Just quickly going back to that, like the conference company I'm working with, trying to drive their sales. That's a pretty clear one of once my work's put in, to see the volume of traffic and also the sales to rise. So that's pretty simple in the sense of I do my work and then they increase their sales, which means I'm successful. Or if it doesn't go anywhere or goes down, which fingers crossed it won't, then I've done a bad job. So that's pretty simple to regulate.
When you say that, are we talking about like direct mail marketing campaigns, or are we talking about, blogs and search engine optimization hits the website, hits the various pages and that kind of thing?
In this case, it is conversions. So converting those visitors onto the website to actual buyers.
But surely something like that, I mean, yeah, copywriting is going to come into play there, but there must be a lot of other elements that come into play that work in conjunction with copywriting for that to be an effective campaign.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, 100%. You have to tick all the boxes. Like I mentioned, that you have to sell that conference to the actual guy who's signing off, not just the employee who wants to go.
Right.
So it can get very snickety and the wrong word to use, but the word that springs to mind is that kind of manipulating sort of the agenda in a sense.
So for the listeners out there, typically people listening to this are going to be somewhat of, novice like myself. Like they're not wouldn't consider themselves copywriters, but if they were going to put together a strategy, what would you say to them on what are some benchmarks or milestones, metrics that they can start measuring to see if what they're actually doing is working?
So for SEO, I would strongly recommend obviously getting a Google account and using Google Webmaster.
Yep.
And that tracks all of your sort of analytics and the actual behind the works of your website, the SEO. There you can track how your website's doing, if there's any errors or any blocks that will actually prevent your website from being seen.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I definitely tick off. Again, Google Analytics, that just tracks where your traffic, how many people are viewing and whatnot. In regards to copywriting, I mean, this is opening a can of worms in a sense.
Sure.
Depending on how you actually get clients, whether that's direct mail, direct contact. So, for example, if you're cold calling, then you'd want to get a good a script. You want to bounce that off, and obviously that's a very much unfortunately trial and error process.
Mm-hmm.
You try one script, doesn't work, alter it, and obviously keep on going.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, brilliant strategy of actually putting pictures to a project, so when someone looks at it, they can see that description and actually physically be able to see their the end goal.
Yeah.
But in regards to writing, as we mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, that kind of Joe Blogs view really get across that benefit of why they should pick you. I mean, that itself is another can of worms why they should pick you, because again, trying to sell yourself. So again, it's you go on endlessly, but it's that sort of presence and I know it's an odd word, but demeanor that you produce to for your clients and customers.
So I suppose moving on a little bit, we're getting towards the end of this recording now, but there's a few more things I do want to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about the relationship between what I've sort of coined it the ecosystem, and I wanted to get your feedback on this as somebody who is a copywriter. What's the relationship between copywriting on a website and how that correlates to, say, a Google AdWords campaign, which then might correlate to a Facebook marketing campaign, and how that whole ecosystem works in unison together in order to improve what we're after at the end result, which of course is conversion.
Yeah. They're all interbalanced. Moving just away from Facebook for a second, LinkedIn have spent an inordinate amount of money on SEO. If you type in your own name into Google, if you have a LinkedIn account, that is, I could easily put a bet on that would come up top.
Are you sure? My name's Matt Jones.
Go on, give it a go. Put money where our mouth is here.
I'm sure if I typed in Matt Jones in my company, I would definitely come up.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just slide in there. In most cases, you do that.
Yeah, there you go. Number 2.
Are we on a hit? Got LinkedIn?
Yeah, I just typed in, so Matt Jones, Tradie Web Guys, and the second organic link was my profile, my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah. So that's a trick that I would strongly suggest for listeners out there to use, is set up a company LinkedIn profile and set up a personal profile. Post on your company and then share it again on your personal, because Google picks that up as fresh content and relevant content, because a personal user is sharing a company post. That's a little trick for you guys there.
So say that again, Owen.
So if you post a article or example a project you've completed on LinkedIn as your company page, and then you go onto your personal page and share that article with your personal readers, because LinkedIn have spent so much on SEO, Google picked that up and see that the article is obviously relevant with the tag words in, for example, a kitchen renovation, if you use that kind of angle. And that actually helps push content up through LinkedIn and because it's your company's site, it actually pushes traffic to your site. That's a little trick that not a lot of people know with LinkedIn and Google, their sort of relationship there.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know that. I do know that my business page on LinkedIn is just, it seems like it's just a waste of time. Like I post so much content to it through syndication and I never feel like it goes anywhere. But my actual personal account is, that does, well, I mean, that's got it's quite a good profile, but the business accounts just suck. I don't know if I'm just not doing it right.
No, you're right, Matt. The business accounts aren't really that sort of impressive. I mean, if you look at mine, it's pretty bland, but it's just a tool to just help with Google. LinkedIn's great if you're basically trying to find a sourcing list or sort of researching companies.
Yeah.
People like ourselves who are trying to push our own agenda out there, it sometimes does fall on deaf ears.
Okay, interesting.
So then that's obviously a connection to Google, and then Google AdWords. Again, with AdWords, for each keyword you want to do, make sure it starts with a capital letter and make sure you put a full stop at the end and then do your next keyword. That helps Google a lot break down the keywording for your site, which again will bounce to traffic to your website, or if you want to go LinkedIn or if you want to go Facebook,
yeah,
that helps, push that traffic through. And then work on your website. Again, it plays once you're in the website, you want those different links. Google loves the links to relevant information, guest posts, whatever. And they all intertwine basically like a big circle that just keeps on going around. And if you don't do one, you're breaking the circle, and then you're going to find it really hard to get to be visible.
One of the areas that we spend a lot of time focusing on these days with the web development, website building, and all that kind of stuff is so often people will call us, actually pretty much every day they'll call us and they'll say, hey, so-and-so, I'm after a new website, but I also want more leads. And that's fine. When we look at, we'll sort of say, okay, that's great. So diving a little bit deeper, why do you want more leads? Well, we want my phone to ring more, blah, 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 this kind of stuff. And then when we have a look at the website they've currently got, you've got to take into consideration what the website or the journey that customer's taking once they get back to that site. Because you can spend all the money in the world on Google AdWords, Facebook ads, whatever you want. But if when that person, the visitor, gets back to your website, if that message is not clear and they're not getting that information that they're looking for, that's a wasted, that's not going to convert, and it's a waste of a click. So when we talk about, when I talk about, I suppose, that ecosystem and how it all works together, I'm really sort of trying to refer to, the relationship between, your ad copy, and then when they click on that ad, the page that they're sent to, the specific page, which should be talking about that specific ad, not your homepage. So it's relevant. When they see that information, they're basically getting the information that they're looking for and that they've been, I suppose, attracted to within that initial ad they've seen on Google or Facebook or whatever it is. And then the copywriting on that page, of course, improves the conversion from the AdWords campaign or the Facebook campaign, because it's they're getting the right information that they're looking for. Whereas if they're not getting that information, that will affect your AdWords campaign. And it's a whole little, everything sort of goes around in circle and everything works together. So I always try and encourage people to make sure that before they even think about spending money on ads, that they really focus on that platform when the customer gets there.
Yeah, I'm right behind you on that, Matt. There's a perfect example for your listeners. I'm working with just a single medical practitioner. Now she's in really actually on the forefront of her industry and how she works. Really modern style technique. And then I went to a website and it honestly felt like I'd gone back to the 90s. Like there's word art, and as much as it's as a kid, it's not relevant now. And my first thought was, how many people are lost in this site?
Yeah,
and they click on that website, and it looks like it's been dormant for 20 years.
Yeah.
So you can put as much work as you want into the adverts, but I fully agree. I'm just reiterating your point here that once they get on that website, you need to continue that relevance, and that's a modern style and obviously being up to date.
Yeah. And for people out there that think that that sort of stuff is not a reality, and if you go to a marketing agency, they're going to be on top of that. I'll tell you a little story. So a couple of years ago, I was in Google headquarters in Sydney, and I was with a client of mine who I'd actually, ironically, done some copywriting for his website. I basically wrote his website. He was a plumber, / electrician, probably the largest or one of the top two largest plumbing electrical companies in Sydney, definitely, yeah, by far. Anyway, so we went into Google and we had this meeting, and the meeting was there basically because we wanted to bring the AdWords specialist from Google. I mean, he was at the time spending $150,000, $160,000 a month on Google AdWords, so like considerable budget. And at that point, they sort of assign you your own campaign manager, if you will. He had his web developer in there. He had his SEO guy in there, and then he had me in there because he brought me in because he knew that my take on the whole thing was very like neutral. Like I do like to consider the whole ecosystem, and I was amazed at even at a macro level when you're talking to people at Google, they just had such a little idea. Like these guys were the campaign managers for a Google AdWords campaign that was spending $160,000 a month, and these guys had no idea about content and SEO friendly content on a website. And they didn't even give a shit. They were just thinking, well, as long as you're spending the money, mate, I don't give a crap what happens once they get there. It was just mind-boggling.
I've got a bit of a funny story. Obviously, you know my title is a copywriter.
Yeah.
So in Google AdWords, I had copywriting and copywriter. And it kept on getting dishonored, so basically disapproved. So the advert wasn't actually going up. So I rang Google AdWords and I said, look, what's going on? And they had the view that copywriting was dishonest because it was advertising for basically copying work. So like a copy essay or cheating in that sense. And I was like, please tell me you're joking, aren't you? This is my job.
You're a very dishonest profession there. Oh, look, it really is quite scary. And I always try and say to people, like when we're presenting at workshops or whatever, like the one takeaway I can try and leave with people is this. If you can improve, if you're spending $1,000 a month on AdWords and your website's converting at, say, 2%, if you can not increase any more ad spend, keep $1,000 a month and increase your website conversions from 2% to 4%, that's a 100% increase. You're not spending any more money, but you're doubling your conversions. So people get so caught up in trying to get more leads, they sometimes neglect and they forget about the importance of improving conversion. And so that's always my message in relation to that.
Yeah. I was at a meeting this morning actually that we were discussing that as with people's leads. There's always that yes, maybe, and no. And the maybes, you need to just put yes and no. So there's no point, piling in money into something that won't go there.
Yeah.
You need to convert the people that you already have and optimize that kind of input. So.
Awesome. Well, look, mate, I think we've pretty much spoken about everything that I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that we've missed out?
No, I think we've definitely covered the basics and revealed a few tricks for the listeners. So I'm happy. I'm obviously, thank you very much for inviting me on. So it's been great.
No, mate, thanks for sharing your knowledge. And for the listeners out there, how can they get hold of you?
So they can email me, owen@russell-writing.com. Head to the website, www.russell-writing.com.
It's SSL.
SSL, always say that, and especially in the coffee order, it's always one L.
Oh, actually, and your website is russell-writing.com, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And Facebook, facebook.com/Russell Writing, and Instagram, obviously, Russell_writing.
Cool. Well, I'll put some links to that in the show notes anyway, so if anyone wants to get hold of you, they can. And I believe you have left behind a bit of a gift for the listeners out there if they want to get hold of it.
I have. So I've actually written an ebook in the basics of SEO and Google and how to basically overcome them.
Yep.
So that will be available for you guys, free copy to get stuck in and to get the basics down and to make sure you've got that platform to get business.
Wonderful. Well, there you go. Well, mate, thank you very much for your time once again. For the listeners out there, if you've got any questions or if you wanted any clarification on anything that Owen's spoken about today, by all means, you can either email us through the site shed there, or you can leave some comments on the in the comments section of the show notes for this episode. Likewise, if you see it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever you see this podcast pop up, you can leave us some comments there as well, and we will certainly get back to you. So, Owen, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Matt. Been a pleasure.
And for listeners out there, that is a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to the siteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.